immigrants and new immigrants. First of all, our old immigrants. When you hear for this time period, the old immigrants are the ones from the early 1800s, and they came from Western Europe. Sometimes I confuse people because I will say Western and Northern Europe, but we'll just keep it at Western Europe for you. These are the ones that came from Ireland, the people that came from the Scandinavian countries, the ones that came from England, France, and even Germany you put in here, although Germany will kind of keep going over the time period. But that is the Western Europe. So if the old immigrants are from Western Europe, any guess of where the new immigrants are from?
Eastern.
Okay, Eastern and Southern. Probably the one that most of you know of in time for this time period to think of is Italy. Okay, because we had a lot of Italian immigrants, but a lot of Slavic immigrants, Russian, Greeks at this time period. So that's why I say both Southern and Eastern Europe in here. Now you'll see this phrase, birds of passage. Anyone know what that means in immigration? When it's when a person was a bird of passage.
They're coming, but they're still planning that it's like part of their route. They're going back though.
Yeah, and that's where it would be part of their route or what their plan is. A lot of people, and this was really true for people that were Italian, they didn't come to America thinking they were going to put down roots and be here for generation after generation. They came here because, well, they can go to America, get jobs, and then they're going to go back to Italy when they make some money. Or they're going to come and work and send some money back to the family back home. We have birds of passages today with some of our immigrants that come from south of the border and the Caribbean. Some come planning to stay here permanently, but some aren't. Realistically, this is where when it comes to immigration, no matter what the time period is, and this is where the video that I showed you yesterday from the Daily Show, you end up having it's just different groups replacing it. Right now, if you were to go and say like the attitudes that a lot of times people have when it's immigration, either from Asia or from the Latin American countries, if you were just to replace them with Italy, Greece, that would be 100 years ago. All right, you replace them with Ireland, and that is not quite 200 years ago, but that is where this comes in. There. So, as you know, that's one of the main things you have to know for this part is the new and the old. If you see with this, I know you can't see them real close, but you'll notice that there was a big spike when it came to immigration in the late 1800s. And then when we get to later on, you're going to see that when we get to after World War I, that we'll have that immigration go down. Two places you need to know, Ellis Island and Angel Island. Some of you might mention Ellis Island in your show and tell. Because some of you may have had some family members that is where they came in. Ellis Island was the entry point for a lot of the people that came from Europe. Not everybody that came from Europe, but a lot of people from Europe. They went through Ellis Island, which is off of New York City. Most people know of Ellis Island, not as many people know of Angel Island. But Angel Island was pretty much the same thing, except for where people were coming in from Asia. Now, I have on here their processing that they have. They had to be approved. They were given a physical, make sure they weren't bringing in any diseases. But one thing that ends up happening, and some of your families might have had something like this happen to them, their name got misspelled or changed. Why?
Because they want it to be American, if they want to change it, and misspell, they just mess up.
Yeah, some people wanted it to sound more American, and what else?
If they told someone their name, the person was writing it down.
Yeah, if whoever wrote your name down that was working at Ellis Island, and you pronounced it, and the way they spelled it was the way it was spelled. That's your official. It's kind of like your official name is what's on your birth certificate. You might go by something, you might spell it a little bit different. You might, instead of using a Y, do an IE. But if your official name, and that's what ended up happening is, and think of yourself, if you were a person working at Ellis Island, and you have all these people coming through over and over again, and there's a lot of chaos that's going on. And some people may not even care when they write the thing out, I just misspelled it, it's some name. Okay, so, and there might have been a letter that got lost along the way or something like that. But that's what ended up happening. But some people also changed it to try to make it sound more American. Had this in one other section before, but one group that got discriminated against a lot more were, well, for Asians, but particularly Chinese. We would have the Chinese Exclusion Act. So pretty easy to know what they did, because guess what group of people they were excluding? Yeah, Chinese. We would pass it in 1882, pass another set in 1892, and then in 1902 we said, well, let's just make it permanent. And we said no Chinese were allowed to move to America ever again. Then they were on our side in World War II, and we decided to be friendly with them again. There were anti-coolie clubs. This is anti-Chinese clubs that were around. One of the things that caused this is Tong Wars. And when you see Tong Wars, almost think of mafia, except for it would be like a Chinese mafia. And what? Yeah, I mean you can kind of think of that in that way. But if you think of it, some of the backlash that you might have, do people today think that, oh well, with the immigrants there's a lot more crime and organized crime? Okay, well, this is one thing that why is it that you don't want this group or that group? Well, the Italians, oh look, well there's nothing but a bunch of criminals but in there. Look at that mafia. Okay, is every Italian part of the mafia?
Pretty much.
Pretty much, okay. I'm not Italian, so I don't know. Okay, was every Chinese part of these gangs and these tongs? So that's where. We also had against the Japanese. We had a backlash against them. We had a diplomatic controversy. This one is not as famous as the Chinese Exclusion Act, but we had a school system that went and made segregated schools in California for Japanese people of Japanese ancestry. And here's something that for you all to think at a little bit different level. I know a lot of times when we have things in history, here's A, here's B. We have segregated schools in the South, but what are they doing in California?
Segregating schools.
Yeah, but are they doing it by race with black and white?
No.
No, here's where they have for people of Japanese ancestry. So we have that. And I have this question, why is there so much discrimination against Asian groups?
They're smart.
They're smarter?
Because
Are they really smarter? Or is it maybe part of a cultural work ethic to work harder? I mean, it's part of what I do with you all. Do I give you all a lot of quizzes? More than most teachers? I don't give you near as much reading, but I give you a lot more quizzes. I actually do things a lot in the Asian Act method of education, because I like, here, learn these smaller things, put all these smaller pieces. Okay, and that's what they end up doing a lot more. So I kind of go a little bit more on that side instead of, here, we're going to learn the big broad ideas, and here, I have it where we're going to build some things and build off of that foundation and have some basics to go. That's kind of my philosophy of doing things. But this is where the culture that they have, I mean, and for working hard. So they would come and they would be more successful. Are people jealous of people that are successful?
Yeah.
Yeah. And what if those people are different? Are you going to hold it against them?
Oh, shit.
And so that's what ended up happening a lot of times when we had Asians in there. Oh, one other thing in here, the Immigration Origin Acts of 1924. By the time we get to this point right there, where we had the Chinese Exclusion Acts, well, let's ban all Asians by that time.
All Asians.
A lot of times we look at things for discrimination. We think only about sometimes with African Americans, but you look at things what we had against Asians. All right, a lot of cartoons at this time, and just look and see how some of the Asians are depicted. I mean, you see Uncle Sam kicking what would be a Chinaman out. Yeah, Trace.
Which mean like everybody in Asia, like including Indians
And pretty much we didn't have too much from India at that time. And because most of their contact with India was coming more from Britain, because since it was a British colony at that time. And later on we'll get to the imperialism side, where we wanted to kind of take a part of making China pretty much a colony.
Tom's Nass is dead now, right?
Yes. Well, there it is. This is the cartoon I showed yesterday. The main word to remember, which just goes back from our old section, is nativism. There. But this is where we could replace this picture, and we could put people that today are Italian, and telling if there was If there was a person that was Mexican and telling them, no, we don't want you. All right, a person that maybe is Jewish in background, Irish in background. So the same idea with the picture. All right, once immigrants arrived, remember those political machines? They helped them out. They lived in a lot of different ethnic communities and tenements. And the one section that I skipped here that we're going to come back to was 6.5. We're going to go over about basically all these areas in the cities that you have. And tenements are these really cheap apartments in some ways. Yeah.
Assimilation.
Well, assimilation. Remember when in the Dawes Act, when we tried to assimilate the Indians?
Try to get them to be American.
So what did we do with the immigrants when we tried to assimilate them?
Make them more American?
Yeah, make them American.
Oh, that was nation?
Yeah, and that's why it's again I forgot I didn't have that on any slides in there, but assimilation, and we're trying to make the Native Americans like us. We're trying to make any immigrants like us. We don't do that anything today, do we? Ever hear anything about English only? Is that assimilation?
Pledge allegiance.
Well, yeah, pledge allegiance, things that you do there also are things to try to incorporate into society. All right, now, here we go. Increase mandatory schools. The best way to assimilate you, brainwash you, is to make you have to come to school, isn't it? And the younger we get you, the more that we can brainwash you, right? So let's not start with first grade, let's start with kindergarten. Let's do pre-kindergarten. Settlement houses, another thing that we will go to, and you might remember with Jane Addams. The settlement houses, one of the group of people that they tried to help were the immigrants. So, all right, immigration restriction leagues. These are basically different political clubs. Any guess of what the immigrant restriction leagues tried to do?
Make restrictions on immigrants.
Yeah, this is tough. All right, but that is where they. Now, the other word you need to be familiar with is quotas. What does it mean when you have a quota?
You have to reach something by a certain time.
Right, a certain time, or I mean, it's in there, but a certain number in this case that you have. With the quota, we were saying, well, we're only going to allow so many from this country, this country, or this country. Again, you're going to see that come up when we get to the 1920s. All right, relationship with unions. Here's where it's really an ironic thing. Many of the immigrants joined the unions, which is why a lot of people didn't like unions. But Samuel Gompers is an example of this, the leader of the AFL. He wanted to restrict immigrants. So why, if the immigrants are joining the unions, do you want to restrict immigrants?
Keep the money
Not less
in
union.
America.
All right, wait, someone said,
That's competition.
well, a lot of times they're unskilled workers. Plus, if they're coming off the boat, more and more immigrants coming off the boat, is it easier to replace the workers that are already here? So that's why the unions won. It's kind of like people that move here to Citrus County. A lot of people move here to Citrus County because of it's being quiet. And then when they move here, they're like, oh, well, we want to have some restaurants. But then when they move restaurants, that means more people will come. Well, now the roads are too crowded. Well, you can't have the best of both worlds there. You can't have it where, all right, we need immigrants in our union, but that's going to make it hurts the cause of the unions there. All right. But that's where the union leaders were opposing them. All right, backlash against new immigrants. It would really start in the early 1900s. It would build up. Some of the groups here, and this is where we kind of see the same thing. The American Legion. And we're going to have the KKK come back later on. And the 1920s would be the heyday of the KKK. And does anybody know what state would be known as the KKK state or the Klan
Kentucky.
state?
Alabama.
Not Alabama, not
Kentucky.
Tennessee,
Georgia?
not
Florida.
Georgia.
Virginia.
Florida.
Kentucky.
Florida.
You're getting closer to Kentucky, go a little further north.
West Virginia.
Ohio?
See?
Virginia.
Next to it,
Washington.
Indiana.
Really?
Just say everything.
Now, y'all were saying all southern states.
Alabama.
Yes, the Klan did get big again in the 1920s in the South. But where the Klan really gained was in the 1920s, was in the Midwest. So were they really as much against blacks, or were they against immigrants? Where these immigrants had moving there. So that's one thing. And when we get to the 1920s, we'll see that come in again. But this is all stuff building towards it. I throw this one in here because it's actually for a later section, but it's one of the things that's hard to remember. in all reality, this is not real important. I mean, it's one of those things changing over time, but this is one of those things that I have found that somebody that writes test questions for the college boards must think this is really important, because this pops up periodically on here. So, the Dillingham Report, just to start getting it in your mind, when the government made this research, they basically said everything wrong with our country is because of immigrants.
True that.
All right, why is there crime? Oh, there's immigrants. Why is there divorce? Oh, it's immigrants. Why? I mean, basically, this report kind of said that's what it was. Which later on, if you are the KKK or other groups, well, look, the Dillingham Report says this. Said in the whole scheme of things may not have been important, but it's something I want you to be familiar with. The Red Scare would have it where there's all this backlash once we come to it, that we would start to restrict for it and more calls for quotas. And by the time we get to the early 1920s, we will have quota acts passed. Here is a very famous cartoon. You have a funnel with all these people from Europe, and we're only allowing in, and I can't read it from here, I think it says 3% on there. Because in the Emergency Quota Act, they're allowing 3% of people of what was of the population in the 1900 census. The 1924 National Origins Act would actually even go stricter than that, because it would go to a lower percentage of a previous census amount.
What made them decide like what people to make the 3%?
Well, here's where it came down. Basically, when they were doing that restriction, the new immigrants were the one they were restricting. Because if you allow, well, we're only going to allow 3% more of whatever race you are, background. Well, if there's only so many Italians in 1900, but there's a lot more English. So there are plenty of English. Basically, it's all the English that wanted to come. They could come. But Italians, no, we're going to allow less of them. Russians, no. Swedish, okay, yeah, we'll let them. So, but it was basically these quotas were restricting the numbers of the new immigrants. Of course, what were we doing with Asians? 1924?
Not letting them.
Yeah, none. All right, completely closed the door. None of this 3% stuff. All right, push-pull factors. And here's where you see, this is where immigration, whether we're talking about this year, 100 years ago, or 200 years ago. What is the number one reason that people will move from one place to another?
Freedom.
Jobs, money.
Jobs is number one, freedom's number two. Okay, economic reasons is number one. Why is it that we have had in the past 10 years so many people from Mexico coming to America?
Jobs.
Yeah, it's jobs. Now, freedoms is the second reason that usually you have people within America where we have a lot of freedoms. All right, I know I have some other questions on there. What do I have on there?
What pulls immigrants to the US?
Okay, the pools, this is where you kind of look at it in here. People will want to come for freedom. They will want to come for jobs. They will come for the fact that we have the abundant land. Okay, we're giving the land away for free. So that pulled people to go.
And what pushed them is they want from their home countries.
Right. What pushed them? The population got too crowded in the country that they were already living in. The agriculture changes and the Industrial Revolution kind of come in together. Did they need as many farmers in Germany and Russia as they needed in the past? So those people they didn't have the jobs, so they had to go somewhere. So that kind of pushed them out of their country. But we have jobs, we have that. So some of these work together when you're talking about push-pull factors that you have. If you're being restricted on how you can worship in your country, but America has economic freedom or religious freedom, will you go then in that case? So that's why the push-pull is just a generalized idea. Can we put this for this year? Reasons why people, again, and that's why I say immigration, when you think about immigration, don't just think one time period. It's not just the Irish in the 1840s. It's not just the Italians in the early 1900s. It's not Asians and Latin Americans and at the millennium. Okay, when an immigrant comes, no matter what time period, what are the major barriers that they face?
Language.
All right, language.
Opposition from the people that are already there.
Opposition from the people that are there, the nativism. But number one is language. Do Do we discriminate as much from a person that's from Australia as a person that's from Mexico?
No.
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 Yeah. In fact, you say, "Oh wow, cool accent." Right? Say Barbie, okay? Yeah. All right, but that's where. Okay, say good day, okay? But that's where for language. Meanwhile, if you have someone that doesn't speak the language, there, different cultural things, nativism. Are most immigrants poor?
Yeah.
Yeah. Now, is it that we Americans don't like poor people?
Yeah.
Yes.
Or do we kind of get that it's psychological sometimes that you look down upon them? They're as if they're a servant. A lot of our immigrants, are they doing jobs that you would kind of look at that would be as a servant? Housekeepers, working as, your lowest laborers, lawn service, working roof. So they're doing the jobs that are some of the lowest jobs that we have. Same thing was true 100 years ago. Religion. Oh, there's no discrimination with religion in America, right? We have this religious freedom. Yeah, not against Jews in the past. Today, no matter what, if you're in Inverness, Florida, all right, nobody would ever think anything with a Muslim person. Right? There would be no discrimination at all in Inverness. So you do. This is where you see this. That will be a backlash. All right, cultural things, and this is where just being different. You all don't have this, as far as I know, for most of you, because most of you don't have it where your parents are from a different culture. But a couple of years ago, when I was in Dunellen, and a lot of the students that I had there, their parents were from other countries. And I still remember a girl that was trying to explain to her mother. You all have it where, oh, you don't understand. It's not 1972, Dad. Okay, it's not 1980s. All right, and try. Well, what if not only are things different from the time period, but a whole different culture? Well, girls aren't supposed to go out with guys until they're 18 years old. Okay, you're not supposed to ride in a car with them. Okay? You have a culture, not just age difference in there. Nativism, which you brought up. All right. Here's where I had this one last little question. America, we're called a melting pot. See all this? You put all these groups of people in there, stir it together, and that's what makes us America.
Pretty much.
No.
Now, I had a professor one time that said, we are not a melting pot, we are a salad. Because, can you tell the difference with someone that is Asian in background, African in background,
Yeah.
European? So you go, but what makes a salad good is when you mix all of those things together. But one of my classmates said, we're not a salad, we're a stew. If you put a carrot in a salad and then take it out after you've mixed everything up with the dressing and everything, you take it out and wash it off, has it changed?
No.
No, it's still the same thing. If you put a carrot in a beef stew, you cook it up, you take it out, can you tell where the carrot is?
Yeah.
Has it changed? And this is what this person said. When a person comes to America, yes, they might have that background, but have they changed somewhat? So that's where this person was saying, and that's why I kind of say, are we really a melting pot? Because if we're a melting pot, we would all be one kind of
Homogenous mixture.
All right, so that's the end of the section.